Good afternoon, everyone. I, Umayya Khan, a research scholar at the Department of English, AMU, welcome you all to day 5 of online Gyan course on Unraveling the Problem of History, Exploring African and Indian Writing. We have with us Professor M. Rizwan Khan, Professor Claudia Eggerer, and Professor Stefan Helgeson in today's panel. In today's session, we have one lecture and two tutorials, which are open forums to discuss any questions you may have from the previous lectures. Before we begin, there are a few points to be noted. During the lectures, please post questions and comments in the chat box. They will be taken up either during the lecture or at the end. A 15-minute mandatory test will be given at the end of the session based on the lectures given during the day. The test will be posted on the WhatsApp group. You can attempt the test by midnight. This test will be graded and grades will be reflected in the course certificate. Duration of the attendance will be also, and the session will be recorded. So, our first segment for today's session is a tutorial with Professor M. Rizwan Khan.
Okay, Umara, thank you.
Okay.
Dr. Rizwan is joining in a while, so I'm here to I welcome all the participants to the last day of this session. So, participants, I'm sure you have enjoyed the discussion so far. Since this is a tutorial lecture, I open the floor for discussion. If there are any questions, you can ask them right away. Also, if it is possible for some of you, we would like you to be available on video so that we can have some screenshots for our records. If it is all right, please switch off your video. So, are there any questions, any discussion points, anything that you want to put across? So you can think of it. Meanwhile, I am sharing with you an important video, which is the point of discussion in this tutorial. This video is very famous and it is titled Freedom at Midnight. And it has very relevant sections to frame about this particular course, to talk about this course. I request Sadia Khan to please play the video. We are not going to play the entire video, which is a long one. Some excerpts will be played, which are relevant for today's discussion. Over to you, Sadia. Make Sadia the host.
Sadia, you can present now. You're the host.
I have to finish writing this paper. I'm swamped.
Just get Grammarly. It's free.
Can it help with what I wrote last?
My shadi look really brings out my complexion, है ना?
वो सब छोड़. What about the morning hour?
Okay, we have seen some part of it. The film is not complete, so it will not be possible for us to show the entire film. But what I wanted to put in this discussion across was that there are various ways of looking at the historical events, like violence, like narratives, like cinematography, like visuals. So the discussions that are available in the films that have been made are very important for us to understand that India's freedom came at a very big price. The price that was being paid by the freedom fighters for a long, long time before the year 1947 arrived. And when the year 1947 arrived, it brought with itself partition of India. And partition of India has remained one of the most potent accident of this region, which has its repercussions even today in politics, in cultural life, in memories, in literature. And my question to you people is, all of you can, I'm opening the discussion platform, because I asked this question in my discussion also, that after looking at any film like this or any TV serial or after reading any book, do you think that partition has been essentially documented in all its aspects in the literary as well as performance productions? What is your response to this? And what are the reasons that you would like to give for that? Would somebody like to answer this? Kshitij Patel, Ipsita, Professor Vandana, you would like to say something? Yasa, yes, please, you can speak up. Yasa, you have
Ma'am,
raised
I
your hand.
think yes. I think it is not possible to document every aspect of partition because the partition was not monolithic um, event, and there were many groups who experienced those violence. For instance, we talk about women these days too, but we seldom talk about those children who were very early in their lives had to migrate to India from Pakistan or Pakistan to India, and with them, uh, many families with them they could carry only so, so memory plays a very important role. How they perceive of those things and those rituals, their customs, these play an important role. That their identity in itself is very fragmented, and it will take many years now to document all the aspects of this episode of history. I feel it all the aspects. And their stories die, and we will never be able to hear those stories. And we can read only the work that have been published, or drama, or TV serials or series. But there are many stories, many people who don't have a voice and authority. That is my take.
Thank you, Tiasa. It's a very, very valid point. So first of all, I'd like to take one word that is monolithic that you have used. And I totally agree. And that is why my question always is aimed at creating a kind of provocation, that if it is not a monolithic event or it is not one kind of a linear narrative, don't you think that we all should be inclusive and responsive towards even the perspectives with which we do not agree about not just partition but any event? So the question is that if through literature and literature studies and scholarship we are able to propagate this idea that one event can have varied perspectives, some perspectives may be of our opinion and some may not be of our opinion, but we have to allow all opinions to coexist. This is uh, this is the best way to go forward. Then only, all the narratives will be available for us to choose from. And yes, there are so many things like children, like marginalized classes, like people who are already on the margins of society. What about their sufferings in partition? And what about those who did not displace but still suffered, like who didn't have to leave but still suffered during partition. What trauma did partition have on them? Because generally we associate partition with displacement from one point to another. People are forced to shift. So if that forced displacement is not there, does that mean that those people did not suffer? So there are so many other categories of sufferers as well. Very well said. I think Priyam has also written something here. Sorry, Vishwas has written, perhaps the perspectives of common people have not been shown and only the points of leaders were given importance. Yes, when we make a film or when we write a movie, when we write a novel, we generally look for the central points of references and pivotal roles played by people, and in that leaders come in handy, spokespersons come in handy, important figures come in handy, and we start signifying them as our storytellers. So, who should be our storytellers? Who should be our, chroniclers for such events? And whose gaze should we attach ourselves to? In whose gaze should we participate? This is a very valid question. So, by showing this clip of the movie, I intended to simply, brush up your agony of having the lack of perspectives. This movie or that movie, this novel or that novel, none of them is final. None of them have an absolute narrative to play. And every filmmaker, every novelist, every writer has a right to celebrate his perspective. That's what the freedom of expression says. We need to be inclusive about and responsive about the varied perspectives. Sometimes it may hurt our feelings, but we can write about it. We can react to it in the most constructive manner by creating some kind of a rejoinder to it. That is the best way, because that rejoinder will have a longer life than to simply react to something by a reaction. So a response is a better option rather than reaction. This is one another thing. Then Mrinalini is saying that Diary by Anne Frank describes the pain of World War from child's perspective. Yes, Anne Frank's diary is a very famous celebration of a documentation of pain and chronicle of pain from the perspective of a child during the World War. And I'm sure many such diaries and many such writings are remaining undocumented. So, I advise you students to go for archival based researches more and more. That's why, I brought in discussions on archives in various lectures, because archives are still lying untapped. The archives about India, if you go to England, you find that there is a huge library of Indian archives. Even in India, documents about India's freedom are there, available in various museums, various libraries, various data bank of good institutions. National Library of Calcutta has a huge database. Delhi's archives also have a database. No, but we have not tapped these archives. We are simply dependent on the secondary and tertiary resources developed by agenda-based writers. We have to reach to the archives and try and do some researches on them. This is a significant thing that you should take away from this course. And archive research is a much needed thing in this world in 21st century. Before long, we will be losing these archives forever, and we will not have too many evidence to share with the world. And there will be a memory gap as well, between the generations that are going to be born and the generations that have gone past about the partition, and there will not be any interest. So I'm not saying that we need to continue with the hatred of partition, or we need to remember partition as only a painful past of India. We need to document various writings, various things about partition, which have multiple gazes, multiple perspectives. There are letters written by people to each other during those times. Even during the partition period, even during the worst of the times, there were marriages happening, love affairs happening, people celebrating their childbirth, people writing letters to each other. These kinds of day-to-day events were also happening. And in what ways do we see in the backdrop the presence of this very catastrophic event in South Asia? And this catastrophic event has an impact in the entire world even today, but we somehow fail to spot it. We somehow fail to register its presence on the literary, cultural, and academic intellectual discourses. This we can do only when our archival literacy, our archive based research is sound, and we are stepping in the right direction. If not PhDs, you must at least try writing some papers, and on the basis of archives, and try to think on other people also, other perspectives also, which have not yet been documented anywhere. Mrinalini is also talking about Last Lesson by Alphonse. Yeah, Alphonse Duday's Last Lesson is a beautiful story. I think all of you have studied in your CBSE course, and it's such a beautiful story that documents how the loss of our language and loss of our literature can impact and permanently fracture the society and its memory and its child psychology. It's a wonderful story, and it has a very touching nuance to the entire discussion of cultural trauma that a society suffers during catastrophic events like partitions. Anything else somebody would like to say? Anything else? Okay. Sadia, you are saying something. Yes, love story between Juga and Noora in Khushwant Singh's train to Pakistan. Yes, we have discussed Khushwant Singh a lot, and you're right. That's what I'm talking about. There is a story again, another story about that Kutch region. What that love affair, love across the desert. I think that's the name of the story. That is also about love affair. So life never stops, even in the worst of times. Like, that's why Charles Dickens's lines, it was the worst of time, it was the best of times. That is a very relevant line. That is a very relevant opening, and that opening should inspire us into understanding that even during the best of times there are worst possibilities, and even during the worst of time there are best possibilities. Yes, Avasti, you want to say something?
Yes, ma'am. So, like, this was regarding like how I understood the whole session. Recently, I had a chance to hear Manu S. Pillai, one of the historians, very young historian. So it was regarding it was in one of his interviews. He said that like how history is to be perceived, and like be aware of all the narratives that is available, and most importantly not to judge history and have a single ideology and stick to it, rather than by accepting a lot of other narratives, let that be isolated or major narratives. It's very important in the current scenario of this country. I think that is very important, and I could how easily resonate with this session. And like, yeah, I had to just put it out there. Yeah, thank you.
Ma'am, please unmute yourself.
What's the time for Professor Claudia's lecture?
Ma'am, 2:35.
Yes, she's joining in a while. Yes, Avasti, that's what I was saying. The linear narratives of history are very easy to consume. And we have been conditioned into reading history as a linear process. Whereas linearity is very unnatural. It is not organic. It is multidimensional, always multidimensional. A story that a writer writes for the readers, it stops being a linear story once the writer has completed it. After that, it becomes a multidimensional story because readers can read it from any perspective, from anywhere, from beginning to end, from end to beginning, from middle to beginning, from middle to end, from anywhere. And Roland Barthes has said this in his very famous work Saza, that we need to create multiple texts, multidimensional texts. That linearity has to be violated. Linearity restricts us, and we have forgotten in our academic, cleansing, that our courses say that this is history, this is literature. We have stopped putting them on one shelf, and that has harmed us in a long run because we don't know that listening to stories from our elders, listening to stories from storytellers, from archives, the oral archives, the oral literatures that are present around us, the inherited knowledge, the common wisdom that is shared by all of us, all this has a role to play in sensitizing us towards history, our sense of history. It may not be factual history, it may not be the history, but it is our sense of history that has got totally distorted by the idea that unless we hold a book of history which has some ages defined in the index list, like medieval, modern, or classical, or unless it has some kings or queens' name written on its top, it is not history. That distortion is because of the colonial hangover, the fractured identities that we are still carrying forward, and we are clueless about how to hold on to the sense of history. What is our sense of history? And that needs a healing, that needs a rebuilding, that needs a revisiting, which Frantz Fanon has very famously said, that we need to reclaim our past to decolonize ourselves. If we don't decolonize ourselves, we will remain slaves even if our country is free. 1947 was a temporal juncture, but we have continued being slaves because we failed to decolonize the intellectual processes, the intellectual responsiveness towards our history, the sense of history. That is something very important. And for that, we have to generate respect among varied perspectives. That's why, today we find that we become very restless, or we feel very insecure if there is some document or some film or a book which is not in my opinion, or not up to our opinion. We feel that this is a threat to us. We feel threatened because we believe in linearity of the narrative, linearity of history telling. If we had been trained like we were always trained prior to our colonization of a kind, if we had been trained into accepting the multidimensionality of history, and we had a sense of history, we would not be that upset with the present. We would not be that threatened by certain developments which sometimes appear to be in our face. So that's something very important. And when I was framing this course, I had this in mind, that it's a very important juncture in our world history, world politics, literary journey, that we should sensitize ourselves by the idea that, do we really have a sense of history? Do we really have the etiquette of handling the historicity of various events, various objects, various peoples in different perspectives? Why do we always judge people as black and white? Why do we always try to look for clean demarcations of ages and binaries? Is it not possible that some kind of person, political hero or cultural hero, who was in the past could have been bad as well as good, or good as well as bad? This is something very human. Why have we forgotten to look at history as the journey of human beings? Why do we try to look at history always as journey of some kind of immortals who should have always been correct or always been incorrect? So these are certain, avenues that this kind of discussion is trying to open. And I'm very happy that you all have come up with such wonderful responses. Fareen is saying here, I've come to realize that a singular, one-sided discourse often dominates, fostering polarization. Thus, both literature and media must embrace inclusivity, ensuring empathy towards diverse narratives and perspectives. Yes, very well said, Fareen. This is what I'm saying, and there are so many ways of putting it. I would love that when you people respond and write your feedback, you all give your definition of this perspective. Try to define it daily to yourself, to everywhere, that this can be done in so many ways. There is no final way of doing that. So this is the juncture where I would like to stop this discussion. We have our next speaker with us, Professor Claudia. Already she has joined us. We can take 2-3 minutes break. Meanwhile, Claudia can prepare her system and everything, put up her presentation. So thank you very much. It's been a wonderful session. I enjoyed your views, your opinions. All Avasti, Tiasa, Sadia, Fareen, Renalni, Vishwas, everyone. Thank you very much for commenting and giving your feedback. Thank you, Sadia, for playing the videos. Thank you, Mara.
Thank you, ma'am, for showing the thought-provoking video and for the engaging discussion.